In this video, I want to give you an overview of my Why What Do series of videos. The aim of these interviews is to help bring understanding to why people do what they do. There are a number of factors which play a part in this: life experience, religious background, education, family upbringing, culture, and so on. But behind all of this is personality type, which is based upon values and meta programs. So typically, if you bring a group of people together to discuss a topic on current affairs, you will find that the group becomes polarized between political left and right. The polarization is because of a difference in values and meta programs. At times, it is important to focus on content, but in arguments between the left and right, our first option should be to take a step back, to acknowledge the differences in values and meta programs which work to form personality type, and to take a risk, and to look at the topic through the eyes of the other. I'm not talking about empathy or standing in someone else's shoes, which is more about how it feels to be the other. Here I'm talking more about a fundamental difference in the programming of the mind. So these conversations are an opportunity to gain understanding why people do what they do. Every action is driven by a thought. So to change a behavior, we need to understand what it is that drives and motivates people. We can gain an understanding of that structure by mapping out values and meta programs. So meta programs are perceptual filters that generally operate at a conscious awareness. They filter perception and determine your preferences in how you think, feel, and act. For example, making a decision based upon feelings versus facts and logic is a meta program. Values work in a similar fashion to meta programs in that they create a frame, a focus, a perceptual filter. Values determine every decision that you make, but how you go about making the decision will be based upon your meta programs. By learning how to recognize values and meta programs, we can begin to understand why people do what they do. In doing so, we can begin the process of mapping out the structure of peace and reconciliation throughout the world. In my Why What Do interviews, I don't elicit values and meta programs. What I do is to start with meta programs and values that differentiate political left from right, and then ask the guest to choose between one or the other. This gives us some interesting information about how the person thinks. Now, there are heaps of talk show hosts, journalists, and interviewers. Some are really good, especially some of the guys and girls in the alternative media on YouTube. But some are real bad and just perpetuate problems. Let me give you an example. About a week ago, I saw Ann Coulter on Bill Meyer's show. She had just published a book and she said that she was unable to find accurate data on illegal immigration into the US from Latin America. So she did her own research and compiled the data from which she drew her conclusions. There was a Latino gentleman on the show. I don't know whether he was a politician or what, but anyway, he listened to Ann Coulter and then says, "You are wrong." Then he says the problem is not how many illegal immigrants there are in the USA, but how many of the Latinos in the USA are good people. And then he talked about all the positive attributes of the good Latinos. Anyway, the story is something like that. It doesn't really matter. The story is something like that. Anyway, Ann kept on asking the man to give some specific reasons why her conclusions were wrong. I think he called her some one-word names and then continued to talk about how good it feels to be kind to Latinos. It was a real bad conversation, yet typical conversations between left and right in terms of the thinking-feeling meta program. That is, how do you make a decision? Is it based upon thinking, facts, and logic, or feelings and emotions? Ann Coulter was operating from the facts and logic end of the meta program, while the man was operating out of the feelings and emotions. And as long as they stayed at either end of the meta program, it will be impossible for them to have an intelligent conversation. If I had been in Bill Meyer's shoes, I would have stopped the conversation. I would describe the metaprograms and tell the man that's saying wrong, without providing any specific reasons why the data is wrong, is not an intelligent conversation. That he needed to provide some specific evidence, some data, some hard facts to refute her claims. I would have also pointed out by saying wrong and then shifting the topic to illegal immigrants and then shifting the focus from illegal immigrants to how nice some of these people are is just a diversionary tactic which leads the conversation away from facts to his preference for talking about something which makes him feel good. I would then have asked him if it was more important for him to discuss facts or for him to feel good. Now, in the Ann Coulter example, there are 4 metaprograms which are evident. There's the facts versus feelings, there's the big picture versus details, there's the intuition versus sensing, and mismatching. So usually I write the metaprogram with thinking, facts, and logic at the top and feelings and emotions at the bottom. But we are better off reversing that. That is because feelings and emotions are abstract and facts are more specific. Now this lines up with the global metaprogram. Do you prefer the big picture or the details? And we might as well bring in the intuition sensing metaprogram. Intuitors pay more attention to their gut feelings while sensors pay more attention to the sensory environment. So when we get someone who preferences feelings, big picture and intuition, and they're in a conversation with someone who's more sensory based and prefers to think through data and facts, then there is no real communication. So what is the solution? If the sensory-based person meets the other at the level of feelings, and if they hold different feelings on the topic, then it's going to get real emotional. And a problem with having a feelings-based conversation is that everyone involved in that conversation is in trance. And the only way a listener can understand the conversation is to go into trance. The only solution to political arguments is to bring people out of trance. So how do we do that? Well, in the context of what I've just talked about, step 1 is to stop the conversation, point out to the people involved that they're using different metaprograms or values. Then invite the people to understand the metaprogram distinctions. Once they understand the distinctions, they slowly move the conversation forwards. But you'll need to constantly interrupt and point out which metaprograms are being used. Otherwise, once they get into the content of the conversation, they will lose track of the process. If you've got any comments or suggestions for topics that you would like covered, please leave them in the comments box below. Please like and subscribe to my channel. And I'd really appreciate it if you could send me a couple of dollars on Patreon to help cover the cost of production. All the best to you, and see you soon. Please take a moment to like and subscribe, remembering to click on the bell. Then check the comments box below to join our team of patrons and crew. And you can always find me on Facebook at the Peace Mapping Group. The link is in the comments box. And once again, thanks and all the best to you.